It's very surreal. Now it's official. I dreamed about this.
Three shocking moves just flipped the entire NFL on its head. In a twist nobody saw coming, three superstar players ditched the league for massive deals elsewhere, sending owners into panic mode. We're about to break down what triggered this sudden collapse. Three names, one league, zero noise. KJ Hamler, Dorian Thompson Robinson, and John Ross are not household names in 2026, but a few years ago, the NFL paid serious attention to all three of them. Two were selected in the first two rounds of the NFL draft. One went in the top 10. All three entered the league with the kind of draft capital that comes attached to real money, real expectations, and a level of organizational commitment that teams rarely give to anyone. And by the start of 2026, all three were without an NFL contract. In January and February of that year, within weeks of each other, all three signed with teams in the United Football League, the UFL, a spring professional football league running its third year following the merger of the USFL and XFL. The UFL exists in the space between organized retirement and an NFL return. Its rosters are built almost entirely from players the NFL has cut, released, declined to re-sign, or simply not called. For those players, it represents the clearest path back to professional football on American soil. The league is not cheap in terms of competition. It draws real athletes, but it is cheap in every financial sense. Its base salary sits around $64,000 for a roughly 10-game regular season. The minimum NFL salary in 2026 is over $885,000. A player who makes it from the UFL to an NFL practice squad can more than double his spring earnings in a single week of per diem alone. The gap is not a footnote. It is the entire economic reality of professional football outside the top league. KJ Hamler signed with the Orlando Storm on January 29, 2026. He was a second-round pick by the Denver Broncos in 2020, the 46th player selected in that draft. He had speed, route-running instincts, and a college career at Penn State that looked like a blueprint for an NFL slot receiver. Denver took him expecting a deep threat complement. He delivered in his first year. Then his body stopped cooperating.
It's very surreal. Now it's official. I dreamed about this.
That was Hamler, the day he signed his NFL rookie deal in 2020. He had no way of knowing how the next 5 years would unfold. Dorian Thompson Robinson was selected by the Orlando Storm in the UFL's quarterback draft on January 12, 2026. The UFL holds a separate draft specifically for quarterbacks, a process that reflects how central the position is to any league's identity and product. Thompson Robinson entered that draft as one of the few players eligible with genuine NFL starting experience. He was a fifth-round pick by the Cleveland Browns in the 2023 NFL Draft, 140th overall. At UCLA, across 5 seasons, he had been one of the most productive quarterbacks in Pac-12 history. Cleveland saw a developmental backup with the kind of mobility and arm talent that could develop into something useful. He got his starts. The results were uneven. John Ross signed with the Birmingham Stallions in early February 2026. He was the 9th overall pick in the 2017 NFL Draft, taken by the Cincinnati Bengals. Before he played a single regular season snap, he had already made NFL history. His 4.22-second 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine set the record for the fastest time ever officially run at the event. That number followed him everywhere. His rookie deal was worth $17,100,000, with a signing bonus of $10,600,000. Cincinnati drafted him expecting a weapon. What they got was something far more complicated. None of the three are in the NFL right now. That is not a coincidence. All three experienced versions of the same pattern: high entry point, real talent confirmed in flashes, then a sequence of events that removed them from NFL rosters. In Hamler's case, those events were mostly medical. In Ross's case, injuries and inconsistency worked together over years. In Thompson Robinson's case, it was a turnover rate and accuracy profile that teams couldn't overlook, layered over a quarterback situation in Cleveland that never gave him stable footing. These three signings were part of a wider movement into the UFL. Names like Laviska Shenault Jr., Matt Corral, and Benny Snell Jr. also landed on UFL rosters for the 2026 season after losing their grip on NFL positions. But Hamler, Thompson Robinson, and Ross stood apart from that group. They carried the weight of draft capital that organizations had invested real first-day selections and real contract money into. That made their UFL arrivals something different from a depth receiver finding work in the spring. It made them a statement about what happens to high-investment players when the NFL moves on.
Several execs I spoke to are very intrigued by what the Chiefs are doing.
The executives paying attention in 2026 are watching something bigger than one team. They are watching a pattern. 3 former NFL investments playing $64,000 spring football, while the league they left generates $30 billion in annual revenue and never once publicly acknowledges what its pipeline looks like or who is carrying it. Each player's story has its own texture. Hamler's is about the cruelty of injuries coming for the same body multiple times. Ross's is about what happens when the most physically gifted player in a draft class cannot stay on the field long enough to become what his talent promised. Thompson Robinson's is about whether a quarterback who made too many mistakes at the highest level can use a slower stage to fix the thing that got him cut. The UFL gave all 3 of them the same basic offer: time, reps, and a camera pointed at them during real professional football games with scouts somewhere in the seats. And the NFL, which discarded all 3, which has never funded the league now showcasing them, and which will quietly benefit if any of them returns to an NFL roster, has not said anything at all. That silence is where the real story begins. KJ Hamler, speed that refuses to stop. To understand why KJ Hamler landing in a spring league carries the weight it does, you have to go back to what he looked like when everything was working. At Penn State, before the NFL ever touched him, he was electric in a way that went beyond statistics. As a sophomore, he had 42 catches for 754 yards and 5 touchdowns. As a junior, he pushed that to 56 catches, 904 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Second team All-Big Ten recognition and a 93-yard touchdown against Ohio State that announced him to everyone watching college football that fall. He was listed at 5'9" and 178 pounds, which meant that when he got to the NFL Combine, his size would raise questions. His speed answered all of them. The Denver Broncos made him the 46th overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the 2nd round. Denver had Cortland Sutton as its primary outside receiver and Jerry Jeudy as its first-round selection from the same draft. What they needed behind those two was exactly what Hamler offered: a slot weapon with burst, a returner, a player who could threaten defenses over the top and stress coverage with speed that linebackers and safeties couldn't match. The selection made sense in every direction. He was a kid who had dreamed about that moment, and in his first NFL season, the dream looked like it was tracking. In 13 games in 2020, Hamler had 30 receptions for 381 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a game-winning catch against the Chargers in Week 8 that tied it all together, the kind of play that defines what you are and what a team thinks you can become. He scored twice in one game against the Panthers for a combined 86 yards. The speed that had made him a second-round pick was translating exactly the way scouts had projected. Then 2021 arrived, and it took everything with it. In Week 3 of the 2021 season against the Jets, Hamler tore his ACL, the same knee. He had torn it before, in high school, before he ever played a college snap, and now it was gone again. Denver placed him on injured reserve. He did not return. The final numbers from that season were brutal in their brevity: 3 games, 5 receptions, 74 yards, and a knee that had now been surgically repaired twice on the same leg before his 24th birthday. He came back in 2022 but lasted only 7 games. A hamstring strain in practice around Week 10 put him back on injured reserve before December arrived. 7 receptions, 165 yards, no touchdowns. The body was not holding. 2023 never happened at all. He had pectoral surgery in March, and then, before Denver's training camp opened, he was diagnosed with pericarditis, an inflammation of the sac surrounding the heart. The Broncos waived him on July 31st with a non-football illness designation. It was the clinical language for a painful reality. A second-round pick with genuine NFL production to his name, gone from the team that drafted him because his heart had become a medical concern. He found his way to the Indianapolis Colts practice squad in September but was not retained. Then came the Buffalo Bills, a reserve and future contract in January 2024, another in January 2025. Both years, he made it to training camp. Both years, final roster cuts removed him. He spent time on the practice squad both years, close enough to the active roster to feel it, far enough away to understand what the ceiling looked like. In 2025, he appeared on Hard Knocks, which was the league's way of acknowledging that his story had emotional texture worth documenting, even if it was not quite roster-worthy anymore. His career NFL numbers entering that UFL signing: 23 games, 42 receptions, 620 yards, 3 touchdowns. A second-round pick who played fewer total NFL regular season games than most starting wide receivers play in a single year and a half. When the Orlando Storm signed him on January 29th, 2026, they were making making a calculated bet that the injuries were behind him, that the speed remained, and that a lower pressure environment with consistent reps could unlock the player Denver had taken in round 2. The early evidence was striking. In week 2 of the 2026 UFL season, Hamler scored a 41-yard touchdown on a 3rd and 19 play. The burst, the separation, the ability to take a short catch and turn it into a foot race, all of it present, all of it visible, all of it the exact thing that had made Denver spend draft capital on him in the first place. Through the first 2 weeks, he had 5 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown, with return work added on top. NFL scouts started paying attention within days. Not loudly, scouts are never loud, but the conversations began. Fan communities tied to the Broncos, the Bills, and the Colts started circulating his highlight clips. Writers who cover fringe NFL talent began noting his early production with the kind of language that usually precedes a training camp invite. The league that had cut him twice, that had passed on him twice, that had waived him on medical grounds. That league was being pushed to reconsider whether its evaluation of Hamler was accurate or simply convenient. His resurgence raises a question the NFL is not publicly equipped to answer. If a player you waived for medical reasons is now scoring touchdowns in a spring league 6 months later, what does that say about the depth of the evaluation that led to the waiver? And if he makes an NFL roster in the summer of 2026, who gets credit? The team that signs him, or the $64,000 spring league that kept him playing when no one else would? John Ross, the fastest player who could never stay. The number was 4.22 seconds. That is how long it took John Ross to run 40 yards at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis in February 2017, and for 7 years that number was the fastest ever officially recorded at the event. Until Xavier Worthy ran a 4.21 in 2024, Ross owned the record. He walked into the draft process as a record holder. The Bengals walked out of the draft with the 9th overall pick spent on a player whose speed was, in any measurable sense, the best the league had ever seen. Ross had the production to go with it. At the University of Washington in 2016, his final college season, he was the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. 81 catches, 1,150 yards, 17 touchdowns. The Combine run was not the only evidence of his ability. His college film was the evidence of the player he was. The Combine run was the exclamation point that made Cincinnati draft him 9th and invest $17,100,000 in his future. His first NFL season was a near total loss. 3 games, 0 receptions, a knee injury in training camp, a shoulder injury in December, and a spot on injured reserve. The 9th overall pick didn't catch a single pass in his rookie year. The Bengals held on. The investment was too large to abandon after 1 season. 2018 offered real reasons for optimism. Ross became a genuine red zone weapon. 21 receptions, 210 yards, 7 touchdowns, team high for Cincinnati. He was finding his role, and the Bengals were building something around that role. 2019 pushed the ceiling higher. 8 games, 28 catches, 506 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. Against Seattle in week 1 of that season. 7 catches, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against the 49ers in week 2. 4 catches, 112 yards, another score. When the body cooperated, Ross was the player Cincinnati had envisioned. The speed was real. The production was real. The potential was unmistakable. Then a shoulder injury in October sent him to IR again. By 2020, the relationship in Cincinnati was fraying. The Bengals declined his 5th-year option in May, the first explicit signal that the team was reconsidering its commitment. He requested a trade in October. No deal materialized. A foot injury in November ended what remained of his season. He had spent 4 years in Cincinnati and accumulated less than 1,000 career receiving yards in total, a figure that would be modest for a single healthy season from any starting outside receiver in the league. He signed with the New York Giants in 2021 on a 1-year $2,500,000 deal. 10 games, 11 receptions, 224 yards, 1 touchdown, a 77-yard reception that, for the length of that single play, looked exactly like the player the Bengals had taken 9th overall. The Giants didn't bring him back. He signed a reserve and future deal with the Kansas City Chiefs in January 2023, briefly retired in July of that year, then unretired and was released in November. The Philadelphia Eagles gave him one more chance on a 1-year deal in May 2024. He appeared in 1 game, caught 1 pass for 6 yards, spent time on the practice squad, and was released in December. His final NFL career totals: 38 games, 63 receptions, 963 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. A player taken 9th overall in one of the most talent-rich drafts in recent memory, with a record-setting measurable and legitimate college production, finished his NFL tenure with under 1,000 receiving yards across 7 seasons with 4 different organizations. On February 4th, 2026, he signed with the Birmingham Stallions. The Stallions are the UFL's defending champions, built around a roster of former NFL talent that gives the team credibility and competitive depth the rest of the league struggles to match. What made the signing work was a personal connection. The Stallions' head coach is AJ A.J. McCarron, Ross's former teammate in Cincinnati. McCarron had seen what Ross looked like at full capacity. The Stallions wanted a deep threat with NFL name recognition and legitimate burst for their already formidable receiving room. The fit existed. Early 2026 UFL production has been modest. 4 catches for 45 yards through 3 games, working within a loaded receiving core alongside other former NFL pieces. The targets are limited. The role is not the centerpiece. At 30 years old, playing in a spring league for $64,000 a season, this is not a story about a return to the top level of professional football. It is a story about a player whose career, measured against the expectations set by his draft position and that combined run, reads as one of the more painful mismatches in recent NFL history between what a player was capable of on his best day and what the body allowed him to be on most days. The question the NFL never publicly asks about players like Ross is the one that lingers longest. When a franchise spends $10 million in signing bonus on a player who cannot stay healthy enough to justify the investment, what does that reveal about how the league makes decisions with first-round capital? The answer is uncomfortable, and it lives inside every UFL signing by a former top 10 pick. Dorian Thompson Robinson, a quarterback without a snap count. Of the 3 players in this story, Dorian Thompson Robinson had the most recent NFL experience and the path to the UFL that felt most clearly like a last resort rather than a fresh start. Hamler's situation was built almost entirely around the body's refusal to stay intact. Ross's was similar, with inconsistency layered on top of injuries. Thompson Robinson's story had a different texture. It was about decisions, about a quarterback who could create with his legs, who could produce in college at a historic rate, and who, when placed under NFL-level pressure and asked to manage a game without turnovers, could not reliably do it. His college record is not in question. 5 seasons at UCLA, 10,695 passing yards, 88 touchdowns, second team All Pac-12 recognition twice. He rushed for over 650 yards in his final season, with 12 touchdowns on the ground. He was the kind of dual-threat quarterback who made defenses plan around him in ways that pure pocket passers couldn't demand. The Cleveland Browns saw a developmental backup with a ceiling worth investing a 5th-round pick in, someone who could observe, develop, and step in if the starter went down. Cleveland's quarterback situation in 2023 was, in its own way, one of the most unstable environments for a developmental quarterback in the league. Deshaun Watson was the franchise investment on a massive, fully guaranteed contract, but Watson's availability was never certain. The team cycled through Joe Flacco and other options. When Watson went down, the offense needed whoever was next in line to at least hold the ship together. Thompson Robinson got his starts. In 2023, he started 3 games, finished with a 1-2 record, 53.6% completion rate, 440 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions. His debut came against the Baltimore Ravens, 19 completions on 36 attempts, 121 yards, 3 interceptions, final score 28-3. Against the Steelers in Week 11, he made the critical late completions that set up a game-winning field goal, the kind of drive that buys a quarterback time on a roster. Against the Broncos the following week, he threw his first NFL touchdown pass on a 2-yard connection to Harrison Bryant. Then he took a head injury and was replaced. The pattern of flashes followed by interruption stayed consistent throughout. That was the projection from outside the building. Inside the building, 2024 erased most of the optimism. 2 starts, no touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a passer rating of 39.5. Watson tore his Achilles in Week 7, and Thompson Robinson stepped in against the Bengals. 11 completions, 24 attempts, 82 yards, 2 interceptions, and a finger injury taken on the same day. The rest of the season followed the same shape. He was capable enough to dress, not capable enough to hold the job. The turnovers were too consistent. The accuracy was too inconsistent. The opportunities were not going to keep coming. On March 12, 2025, Cleveland traded him to Philadelphia alongside a 2025 5th-round pick in exchange for Kenny Pickett. The Eagles had their own quarterback uncertainty and needed depth. Thompson Robinson got another change of scenery, another set of coaches, another opportunity to demonstrate that he was worth keeping on an NFL roster. On January 12, 2026, the Orlando Storm took him in the UFL's quarterback draft. He arrived to the spring league with more actual NFL starting experience than almost any other quarterback in the UFL. 5 starts, real game reps, film from the NFL that coaches could study.
I think that's really how it helps playing quarterback and really all positions. Is just being able to take that same mentality and mindset into the game and know that you got to be locked in for full 4 quarters.
The UFL was supposed to be the place where those 4 quarters finally came together. Instead, he lost the starting position to Jack Plummer in training camp and has been in a backup role through the early part of the season. Limited snaps, minimal film of consequence, the same core questions about his game, the ones that cost him his Cleveland job, that followed him to Philadelphia, that may have followed him to Orlando, still unanswered because the game action hasn't come. He is 26 years old. The UFL was not Plan B. At this point, it is closer to Plan D. And sitting behind a college quarterback on a spring league roster with limited playing time is not the way a player proves the things that need proving. The chess mentor may have helped his thinking. The game snaps are what will determine whether that thinking holds up when the defense is real and the play clock is running. But the NFL actually did. Here is what did not happen. NFL owners did not collapse. Not literally, not financially, not structurally. No emergency ownership meetings were called over 3 spring league signings. No franchise valuations dropped. No roster decisions at the NFL level were affected by the news that a former second-round pick, a former top 10 selection, and a former 5th-round developmental quarterback signed $64,000 contracts in a spring league. The combined guaranteed money in all 3 UFL deals would not cover 1 week of the NFL minimum salary for a veteran player. The league did not blink. But that non-reaction, that wall of institutional silence, is where the actual story lives. Because the NFL's silence is not the silence of a league that is unaware. It is the silence of a league that benefits without acknowledging that it does. Relief. That was the reported reaction from league sources when players were signing and money was moving. Not collapse, not panic. Relief that the football ecosystem was staying active, that players were finding employment, that the machinery of professional football was running. That framing, relief, not alarm, tells you exactly how NFL insiders categorize the UFL and the players in it. They are part of the infrastructure. They just aren't part of the NFL's payroll. The UFL functions as a developmental pipeline in the truest operational sense of the term. Every year, somewhere between 40 and 50 or more UFL alumni land on NFL rosters or practice squads after the spring season concludes. NFL scouts attend UFL games. Teams track box scores. When Hamler scored that 41-yard touchdown in week 2 of the 2026 season and the buzz around him started building in team circles, that wasn't an accident or a surprise. It was the pipeline operating exactly as it's supposed to. The NFL didn't build that system. It didn't fund it. It didn't create the infrastructure that keeps former first-round picks sharp and visible during the months when NFL rosters are set and training camps are still months away. It simply harvests the results. Consider what the comparison looks like in other professional leagues. Major League Baseball funds a complete minor league system, directly affiliated, team-branded, salary-paid, structurally integrated with every MLB organization. The NBA has the G League, which it funds and operates as a genuine developmental tier. The NFL has neither. It relies on the college game as its primary feeder, a system it does not pay for and does not formally operate. And when college-developed players fail at the professional level, the NFL's formal infrastructure for absorbing and developing those players is essentially a 53-man active roster, a 16-man practice squad, and a waiver wire. When a player clears all of those filters, the NFL's relationship with him ends. The UFL picks up from there. Players have learned to handle their own moves, to negotiate their own paths, to find footing in a system that does not hold space for them once the roster numbers say no. The players in this story, Hamler, Ross, Thompson, Robinson, are doing exactly that, not fighting the system, operating inside the gap the system creates and then ignores. Some analysts have described the NFL's relationship with the UFL as exploitation without investment. The league receives professional-grade film, rehabilitation-level conditioning, and live competitive evaluation of fringe talent it had already released, all at zero cost. The players in those games carry real physical risk on $64,000 contracts without NFL-level medical staffs or long-term injury support. The UFL teams carry financial and operational risk to run a spring league that the wealthiest sports property in American history benefits from quietly and consistently. The NFL's annual roster turnover sits around 56%. That is not a small number. More than half of every NFL roster changes every year. High pedigree players cycle out constantly. Picks who didn't develop, veterans whose contracts became too large, injured players who the league's risk-averse medical culture removed from consideration. Those players need somewhere to go if they want to keep competing. The UFL is that somewhere, and the NFL quietly relies on it to stay that somewhere. So did NFL owners collapse? Measured against the literal claim, no. The owners are fine. The league is fine. The $30 billion annual revenue machine continues without interruption. KJ Hamler scoring touchdowns touchdowns in the UFL does not move the needle on any NFL franchise's financial structure. John Ross catching 4 passes in a Birmingham Stallions uniform does not force a front office meeting anywhere in the league. Dorian Thompson Robinson sitting behind a spring league quarterback does not generate a single NFL press release. What it does generate is something slower and harder to quantify. A running demonstration that the league's evaluation systems are imperfect, that its patience with injured players is calibrated to a financial and roster model rather than to the player's actual ability, and that the infrastructure it relies on to keep those players sharp and visible is funded and operated entirely by an entity the NFL has never formally supported or compensated. Hamler's hot start will likely earn him a training camp look somewhere before the summer of 2026 is over. Ross is playing out a final chapter with a championship caliber team that gave him a stage when the NFL no longer would. Thompson Robinson is waiting for snaps that may or may not come, carrying a career turnover rate and accuracy profile that teams will look at before they look at anything else. The NFL is watching all 3 of them, through scouts who will not tweet about what they saw, through front offices that will not issue statements, through a system that has mastered the art of benefiting from labor it doesn't pay for. That is not a collapse, but it is a contradiction sitting at the center of the most powerful sports league in the country, in plain sight, unaddressed. And when the next class of former high-round picks signs spring league contracts for $64,000, while the league they left generates its next $30 billion, the contradiction will be there again, just as quietly and just as clearly. Found this information exciting and unbelievable? Be sure to check out other similar and amazing videos on the screen. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.